please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect analyst, James Anderson. Great to be back with you, James. I know your great fantasy baseball invitational draft is still ongoing, creeping along, so I feel for you. But aside from that, how are you doing on this Wednesday?
I'm doing good. I'm all slow draft out, I think.
Yeah, me too.
Still got like 4 going on, and I'm kind of over it. I'm ready for the games to start.
Yeah, I love slow drafts kind of earlier in the off season. Now I'm kind of too anxious and just want the drafts to wrap up. You and I doing the main event in a few weeks. I'm excited for that. We're gonna have to talk about our KDS pretty soon. You know how I feel. I'm kind of just a leave it be guy, but I'm willing to work with you on that and adjust things. The AL West is going to be our topic of conversation today. Your article, 136 AL West prospects you need to know, went up on March 3rd. And then the that same week, I think it was March 7th, we got word that Forrest Whitley recommended for Tommy John surgery. So he was the top-ranked prospect for you in that organization. Does that change now? How far does he fall, Forrest Whitley, in that Astros org?
Yeah, I moved him down to number 100 overall on the top 400, so he's second now behind Pedro Leon. Really tough guy to rank at this point. I'm going to do a big update to the top 400, hopefully before opening day. Not a big update, but an update to the top 400 before opening day. So might move him further down just by moving certain guys behind him that I want to move ahead of him and stuff like that. But really tough and not far from an ideal time to get this news, because now we're probably talking about a mid-2022 return to game action, because he hasn't even had the surgery yet, and you usually got to assume like 14 months. And then even then, he'll just be kind of building up in the minors. I doubt that he would be much of a major league contributor next season. So definitely pushes back his window. I mean, I already had him. I was still probably higher on him than most people, but I had kind of factored the elbow risk into where I had him ranked before. But now that we know that TJ is happening, it definitely decreases his value. And I wouldn't dissuade anyone if they really just were kind of out on him at this point. There's a ton of risk there, obviously. I still think that, there aren't so many good prospects in baseball that he should be falling like well outside of like a top 200, in my opinion. But yeah, it's definitely not good, and definitely delays his ETA by at least a year and a half.
Yeah, that's too bad. A top pitching prospect throughout his time, and that just comes with the territory, though, these injuries with top pitching prospects. He actually went, I guess it would be less than a week ago. Yeah, last Thursday in my 12-team Beat Clay Link League, Forrest Whitley actually went in that 12-team league, so that hurts. I feel for that manager who took him. I actually lost Jonathan Hernandez one day after drafting. It's just how it is at this time of year.
I have Jonathan Hernandez in TGFBI as well, so that was probably about a day after that, or day before that happened. Yeah. So I'm hoping my TGFBI wraps up before any other pitchers I drafted get hurt, but at this rate, I'm not sure that'll happen.
Yeah, that seems unlikely at this point. That's that always stings when you draft a guy, then immediately they get hurt. That was tough news as well yesterday, but I did get to see Shane McClanahan pitch, and that made me feel a lot better right away because I got him in reserves, and McClanahan looks freaking awesome. So, yeah, tough break for the Astros, losing Forrest Whitley. They also lost Framber Valdez. They did bring in Jake Odorizzi. Do you see any other arms in this system who could play a role as their depth is tested this year?
Well, we know about a decent amount of them. I mean, we saw Luis Garcia debut last year. They're not doing so bad on starting pitching depth, even with those injuries, especially after signing Jake Odorizzi. But outside of the obvious guys and Luis Garcia, who is their third best prospect, Tyler Ivey is a guy that could be in the mix sometime this summer. Bret Conan is kind of an under the radar pitchability guy with a deep repertoire. Most of the pitching prospects the Astros have eventually learned to throw in the upper 90s, but Conan's kind of more of a classic 4-pitch, low 90s command type of guy. He could be up sometime this summer. Sean Dubin, maybe more of a multi-inning reliever or something like that, but we could see him. I know that Brian Abreu still gets talked about in some circles as a potential starter. I don't buy that at all, but I think we probably see Brian Abreu back in the majors at some point in the season as well.
Very nice. And on the hitting side, Pedro Leon, who you mentioned, he leads things off. J2 signing just last year, born in 98. Man, a lot of these guys born during the Monday Night Wars. I don't know if you know what that is, James. WWF versus WCW. But yeah, it's just amazing to see that. Probably not going to see Pedro Leon competing for a spot this year, or am I wrong in assuming that?
Well, he's just really tough to. I mean, I have no idea when we're going to see him. I mean, he turns 23 in May, so like from an age standpoint, I think it wouldn't be the craziest thing if we saw him in the majors this year. They surprisingly have been trying him at shortstop, and obviously the team's going to pump up their guys, but he's getting much better reviews for his defense at shortstop than like Miles Straw back when they tried Straw in the infield. And yeah, I mean, Leon, I like him. I like, from what little I've seen of him, I like what I see. But I'm kind of guessing I think safe bet is he probably opens at AA and maybe spends half the season at AAA and then maybe debuts next year. But I wouldn't completely rule out a debut this season.
You mentioned Miles Straw, so I'd love to get your opinion on him. Not a prospect, of course. He's 26 and has played 98 games at the big league level, 224 plate appearances. I kind of was reluctant not only to pencil him into center field, but also this talk about the batting leadoff for this team. But now it's looking like that may actually happen. Absolute dearth of power. But do you like the other skills enough to maybe give him some attention, Miles Straw?
Well, I've got him in pretty much every dynasty league I'm in. But Miles Straw and like TJ Antone are two guys where like I have them in a bunch of dynasty leagues and haven't really gotten a piece yet in redraft because the price keeps creeping up there.
Yeah.
And I like Straw a lot. He's one of those guys where I was sort of a backup plan in the stolen base department for me in drafts, but he always just seemed to get pushed up higher than where I was considering him. I don't think I know this is going to seem like blasphemy to some, but I think he's not that dissimilar from Nick Madrigal. I mean, I think Madrigal's obviously going to hit for a higher batting average, but I think Straw is going to have a higher walk rate and similar speed on the bases. If not, I mean, I think, if they had the same amount of stolen base opportunities, I think Straw would easily outpace Madrigal in steals. And I guess he probably has a better shot at leading off than Madrigal does. So, I mean, I don't think they're that dissimilar for fantasy value in 2021, even though Madrigal obviously has quite a bit higher floor. Yeah,
with that lack of power, it is kind of, you have to have the right build to welcome one of these guys onto your roster. But I heard Liss mention, he's kind of like a Juan Pierre, like throwback. We don't really have these types anymore in the game, but if you have the right build, I think you can roster Miles Straw in a redraft. I haven't got him in redraft, but I do have him in the staff keeper league, the OG staff keeper league, where I came in dead last year. Yikes! I got some work to do still on this roster, James. I got Acuna to anchor things at least. Luis Garcia third in this Astros organization. Jeremy Pena fourth. Alex Santos fifth. Richie Gonzalez, Colin Barber, Jairo Solis, Tyler Ivey, Hunter Brown. Anybody else you want to shout out here? This organization, I trust them to get a lot out of these guys, but a lot of prospects who may be on the verge and their name hasn't been made quite yet, but some guys in here who are pretty intriguing.
Yeah, they've got a decent amount of depth, but it's all pretty high risk depth. I like Richie Gonzalez as a potential breakout guy this year. He was a J2 guy in 2019. We still haven't seen his pro debut, but big time power, speed, upside if it all comes together. So I'm pretty aggressive on where I've got him ranked. But really, this is a system that lacks much in the way of high floor guys. It's really a lot of boomer bust types, and a lot of it kind of trends more towards the lower levels of the system.
Nice. Now, among the 136 AL West prospects you need to know that you wrote up for your Farm Futures last week, only 20 for the Angels, and I do like the very tip top of this system. And just to be clear, Joe Adell no longer technically prospect eligible because the prospect eligibility rules were changed a little bit last year, right? Like there was...
Yeah, I know that you'll see certain publications don't follow the strict letter of the law with days on the active roster. I'm all in favor of just graduating guys as soon as I can. So I follow that. MLB.com follows that. I mean, I think they probably should sort of be not the standard necessarily for how they rank guys, but maybe the standard for just which guys are eligible. And so for me, Adell's no longer eligible. He still would be first in this system, would still be a top 15 overall prospect for me. But happy to really not have to worry about where he should slot anymore.
And Brandon Marsh, the top prospect here, he's been dealing with an arm injury, but he was a reserve in today's game, so it looks like he's not too far off. I think, I kind of got on the Brandon Marsh hype train after we had Ralph Lifshitz on our XM show, mostly in those draft and hold leagues, and mostly because, Ralph was raving about his defense, said he's maybe the best defensive outfielder in that system now. And I just thought, maybe you grab him because Justin Upton, who knows how long he'll be healthy, Dexter Fowler, who knows, and Joe Adell didn't quite look ready. So, I'm thinking Brandon Marsh in a league like that is a decent stash, but not quite eyeing him up in. I don't know. Actually, he did go in AL labor. I think Steve Gardner took him in the very last round, and I kind of was regretting not grabbing him. Do you see him playing a sizable role for this Angels team this year?
Maybe. I mean, I think he probably debuts this year. He's more of kind of like a June, July type of guy for me. So more of definitely like AL only, draft and holds. Not someone I think you should be stashing in mixed leagues really, but he could be a big fab guy in season if he's really producing at AAA and there seems to be a spot for him to get everyday playing time. But not really on my redraft radar right now.
Yeah, I could definitely see him being a big fab pickup, a trendy guy who everybody's spending big on some weekend whenever he debuts. Chris Rodriguez, the number 2 ranked prospect in this organization for you, right-handed pitcher. This team's always looking for arms to help him out this year. They're going to be going with 6, I believe, to start, and most major league teams need 8 to 10 to get through a season anyway. This season's going to be unlike any other. Probably add like 3 starters to that. So is Chris Rodriguez in the mix, and what do you like in particular about his skill set?
Ceiling. I mean, he's got ceiling that's absolutely through the roof. Could have like 3 or 4 plus pitches, and he's touching 98 with the fastball. good command. It's really been all about durability with him, but he reportedly totaled around 70 innings last year between the alt site and instructs. So, 70 innings last year, he could probably get maybe a little bit over 100 this year. And I expect them to kind of manage him with an eye on him being an option in the majors at some point this year. He is on the 40 man already, which is, kind of speaks to how much he's struggled to stay on the field. The fact that we just don't have that much to work with in terms of official game performance from him, but big time upside, really, really through the roof upside, high risk. I mean, incredibly high risk, but this Angels team is just constantly in win now mode. And so, I think you could certainly argue after Dylan Bundy and Shohei Ohtani that he's probably got the third best pure stuff in the organization. And so I think when you factor that in, we probably see him in the majors this year if he stays healthy. Maybe he breaks in out of the bullpen for them and maybe like a multi-inning role or something, and then he's kind of a rotation staple next year. But I think a guy that is criminally underrated in some places, and someone that in shallower dynasty leagues might actually still be out there. So just a guy to go check on your waiver wire if you're in a shallow league.
Nice. And we mentioned we both kind of like Brandon Marsh as a draft and hold, draft champions type of target. Sounds like you're also eyeing up maybe David Calabrese, Denzer, Guzman. In a league like that, do you think those guys are pretty close?
Nope. Those are first-year player
draft. I'm sorry,
guys.
James. I misread that. First-year player draft. So those starting up with their dynasty leagues should be eyeing those guys up.
Yeah. Calabrese is one of my favorites from last year's draft class, just in terms of a under-the-radar guy, a guy that you can get late. And Guzman, like Calabrese, is just sort of a classic lead-off, big-time speed, nice hit tool, more power than you might expect given the frame. I've kind of compared him to sort of Corbin Carroll light, and I think that's sort of borne out in just sort of where those guys got drafted. But he's a guy from Canada who didn't get scouted that heavily, and I think could really break out. Denzer Guzman's kind of like the exact opposite, big-time power-hitting third baseman. Already has just massive all-fields raw power. Going to have to watch his body in the coming years, but both guys that I think you can get pretty late in first-year player drafts if those are still going on.
Nice. And out in Oakland, A.J. Puck still prospect eligible. How was Adell not? Well, I guess Puck's only appeared in 10 games in the majors. It's kind of a not quite a Randy Arozarena situation where we have this huge body of work on a guy, but Puck, I imagine, is one of those guys who you hope is graduating soon so you don't have to keep ranking him.
Please just stay healthy long enough to graduate, A.J. Puck. Not holding my breath.
Very hard to figure out what he's going to be. But, I mean, still a lot to get excited about with Puck.
I think it's going to be kind of
almost 26.
I think it's going to be kind of like what the Cardinals are doing with Alex Reyes, where they're just going to try to just keep him upright, keep him healthy, keep him throwing all season in some capacity. And then next year he could maybe be a full-time member of the rotation. But really, really high upside with Puck, obviously. I've never thought that the stuff or the command was going to necessitate a move to the bullpen, but you have to worry about the durability issues at this point, possibly forcing that move. But even then, if he can just stay healthy, like he could just be absolutely lights out in a relief role. So multiple avenues to value long-term with Puck if he can stay healthy, but I've probably said if he can stay healthy like 5 times already when talking about him. So very risky.
We'll see. Before we move on, a quick word from our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Fantasy baseball is here, and you've got to check out these new best ball leagues on Underdog. Best ball is the ultimate test of your live draft skills since there's no in-season management. That's right, draft your team, and Underdog automatically credits you with your best performing players every week. You don't need to play the waiver wire or worry about trades. It's just the draft. Who doesn't love drafting? In Underdog Best Ball, you can draft as many times as you want because you don't have to do any roster management, saving you loads of time. Underdog's Best Ball leagues are drafting right now, starting at just $3. Once the season starts, Underdog also has daily fantasy and an all-new Pick'em game. Go download the Underdog app now to get in on some best ball before the season starts. Enter promo code RotoWire with your first deposit, and Underdog will honor a money-back guarantee during your first month. Love Underdog or get your money back with promo code RotoWire. Search Underdog in your app store and enter promo code RotoWire. Best ball is pretty fun. I suck at it, though. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just winging it in this Raz Slam League. We'll see. But I'm just completely out of my element, James. I'm a roto guy, and I'm out of my element in best ball, but it is fun. In this athletic system, Tyler Soderstrom, the second-ranked prospect. Then Dalton Jeffries, I'm kind of hearing some, I got my ear to the ground, James, of course, and I'm hearing some buzz about Dalton Jeffries. I saw that face you made. Dalton Jeffries. What can you tell us about him, and what role do you expect Dalton Jeffries to play at the big league level this season?
Rotation depth, and I think he probably gets a shot at some point. He maybe sooner than later. We'll see how everyone holds up over these next couple of weeks, but big time command guy and fastball, changeup, potentially plus changeup, fastball. It doesn't have crazy velocity, but low to mid 90s. I think I saw maybe he was touching 96 in an outing earlier this spring. I think with him, durability's been a big issue as well, like with Puck, but less recent injury history than Puck, and kind of a no doubt starter if he can stay healthy. Like the command, I mean, it's definitely there, and knows how to pitch. I think they want to try to build him up this year and get him as many innings as they can. And I hope that's in the rotation, but we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. He could be a guy that, there's not going to be a Fabapalooza going on for Dalton Jeffries, but I think in 15-team leagues, there could be a window early this season where if he's going to join that rotation, he'd be a pretty sneaky ad.
Very nice. Then Robert Puason's a name a lot of prospectors are familiar with. Only 18 years old and still doesn't have a single at bat in pro ball. Looks the part, tools off the charts, but do you see him putting it together? What odds would you place on Puason reaching something close to his ceiling?
I would bet against it. If I thought he could reach his ceiling, he'd be ranked probably in the top 40. Like, he's got an incredibly high ceiling. I haven't seen, obviously like you said, he hasn't played in the game yet, and he'll look good if he's just hitting BP. He'll look good if he's fielding grounders and stuff like that, but I haven't seen like a single report on him that suggests that his hit tool is advanced in any regard. Like, I think he would struggle pretty significantly in the AZL this year. So one of those guys where the tools are off the charts. He looks the part for sure, but I could see people's opinion of him kind of shifting down in his debut season this year.
Luis Barrera, you mentioned, as maybe a candidate to see some time this year. He has some experience at Double-A, parts of 2 seasons at Double-A. He's got some speed, too. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Maybe not, to start, he's not really on the draft radar, but speed, and he's hitting well so far this spring, which is always great to see. Luis Barrera, where does he kind of fall on your top 400?
I think he's like on the edge of the top 200, but I like him. Like, I definitely like him, and I like him for draft and holds, especially late, and probably better in batting average leagues than OBP leagues. But I mean, he's probably the 4th best outfielder they have in the org right now, behind Canha, Laureano, and Piscotty. And I mean, I could see him getting playing time if one of those guys goes down. I mean, he might even be a better option than Piscotty at some point this year. He's a good defender. You alluded to the speed. I mean, that's kind of the big selling point there. I mean, he's not going to be a 20 homer hitter this year, probably not next year either. But I mean, he'll hit a few out, and then at least plus speed. So the stolen bases and the avenue to playing time are kind of the big selling points with Barrera.
Nice. Anybody else you want to shout out, or anything else you want to mention with this athletics team in this organization before we move on?
I was pumped that they took Kai Tom in the Rule 5 draft. I thought he should have gotten selected in last year's Rule 5 draft. He did not, but the A's took him this year. I know he's dealing with an oblique injury right now. I hope that doesn't negatively impact him making the team and getting returned to Cleveland. But just a guy that I've kind of always thought was a little underrated. I thought rebuilding team should have taken a shot on him in a Rule 5 draft a couple of years ago. So good defender, doesn't have loud tools. He doesn't have big power, doesn't have huge speed, but can defend all three positions. I think he might hit just enough to be kind of a low-end big league regular.
Very nice. Well, we'll move on to the Seattle Mariners now. Julio Rodriguez, your number one ranked prospect in this organization. Tools off the charts. He speaks good English as well. And like Julio Rodriguez. But Jared Kelenic, we've talked a lot about him. And James, I added yet another piece of Jared Kelenic in this fantasy season in AL labor. Spent 10 on him. I have flashbacks to Colton and the Wolfman grabbing Bo Bichette and I think it was Gleyber Torres in reserves and winning back-to-back years, and I just can't let that happen again. And I'm convinced that these guys are worth the wait in a league-only format and should not go in the reserves. I think they should go in the salary cap auction portion of it. Do you think I overspent at $10 on Kelenic in an AL only?
Maybe. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
I
admit that may be an overspend too.
I would have hoped you wouldn't have had to go to 10, right? Like I think I totally agree with you. I'm obviously not a reserve round pick. I mean, he's going like top 250 in mixed league, so obviously not a reserve round guy. But this knee injury it's a little concerning. I know that we've got a note up saying that he could return next week. I don't know. It's one of those knee injuries where I don't think the news we're getting from the team matches kind of what I would expect the timetable to be. So, could be a guy that, I don't think he's breaking camp on the opening day roster anymore because of this knee injury. He might not have anyways, but, I mean, I think now you're kind of hoping that he's ready to go in early May, but I don't think you're going to see him in the majors in early April, at least. Maybe they are willing to bring him up before the minor league season even starts in mid to late April, but I definitely am a little bit worried about this knee injury.
Same. I hope he's able to get back on the field soon and just, continue to make his case because he's obviously a very talented player. Just the replacement level in an AL only is so limited and so low. I'm going to probably have to be starting a guy like, no pun intended, but Jordan Luplow in place of Kelly.
I'd be fine starting Jordan Luplow.
In an AL only. I think he's hurt right now. But he's going to crush lefties.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to kill your batting average because he's only going to play against lefties.
Yeah, I did get Wander Franco, too, in that AL-only labor draft. And I have a better replacement for him, Hanser Alberto, I feel a little bit better about. But you not being so down on Luplow actually makes me feel a little bit better about it. But because I filled first base with Vlad Guerrero Jr., then corner with Luke Voigt, and UT with J.D. Martinez, I couldn't push Eno Saris on Andrew Vaughn. So he got him for 8, which I think, compared to Kelenic at 10, Eno might have gotten the better of the two.
Well, I would definitely bet that Vaughn makes his big league debut ahead of Kelenic. And I think Kelenic has the higher roto ceiling, but Yeah, I mean, it's tough to not get excited about Vaughn in that lineup.
Yeah, he got another prospect too. I forget who it was, but I thought did a very good job. He was coming up just $1 short on like 20 straight players, and the guys on the radio were ripping him. But he was diligent and pushing guys, and not really price enforcing, but just he was pushing guys to what he felt, and then he had the discipline to back off. So I respected it. Noelvi Marte, number 3 in this organization. Is he kind of an obvious third here, or is the gap between him and Julio and Kelenic not all that great?
Oh, definitely obvious third. Marte probably closer to the pitchers behind him than the hitters ahead of him. Even though maybe in the rankings he might be technically closer to Kelenic than he is George Kirby, it's probably about the same. But that top like 7, 8, 9 guys on the top 400 are a very clear notch or two above guys like Marte. Marte could definitely get there. He's just less proven. He's going to be making his full season debut this year, and he could be one of those guys who's a top 5 prospect in like a year. He could blow up this year. He could, I think expectations are maybe a little unfairly high on him, just because of how much time we've had to sort of hype him up. The power and speed, you can definitely dream on big time production there at shortstop or third base, but we haven't really seen it against upper level pitching. And so I think those top 2 outfielders are incredibly safe with incredibly high ceilings, whereas Marte's got the high ceiling but does not have that same level of safety.
2 pitchers in this Mariners organization that you think could contribute this year, George Kirby and Logan Gilbert. Gilbert seems to be catching some buzz, and he hasn't really been on my redraft radar. But 4 strikeouts over 2 innings in his Cactus League debut Sunday. I saw Shelley Verstraete took him in the Tout Wars draft last night, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Just as a flyer, do you see yourself doing that in a standard redraft league?
I'm going to pull up the board to the Tout Wars draft and hold quick. I don't know when exactly you're going to post this pod, but he was going to be a guy that I was going to take with my next pick if he was still there.
Maybe I could delay it a little bit.
I think no, you don't have to do that. I think he's basically going to spend the entire year in the majors. Like the innings aren't going to, like, he's not going to throw 150 innings, but he's basically what he did at the alternate site last year, what he's doing in spring training. He's kind of established that he's one of their 3 or 4 best starting pitchers already. So I don't think you mess around with him. Like, I think you just kind of get him in the majors. Oh man. Oh wow.
Breaking news?
No, I'm looking at what's happening in this draft. And
is that one going even slower tthan TGFBI?
No, the funny thing is, the Tout Wars draft and hold started on the same day as TGFBI, and I'm a little bit being sarcastic, but I mean, it might finish before TGFBI, even though it's a 50-round draft and hold. So I'm picking at the turn. I've got 3 people yet to pick, and so I get 2 picks, and Gilbert will definitely be one of my picks if he's still there. We'll see. I've actually got a ton of starting pitching in this league, but I passed over him last time around because of that. But I don't think I can let him fall any further. We're at pick 387 right now, 50-round draft and hold. I think that's a great time to pop him. I'm kind of bummed. Brad Johnson took Trevor Rogers of the Marlins, who is definitely a target.
I know you've been kind of leading that train, and I saw a tweet from our buddy Craig Mish that really got me excited about Trevor Rogers the other day.
Well, I was trying to lead the train, but then Ray Butler over at Prospects 365 really kind of took a hold of the lead car in that train a few days ago. I mean, if you're not out there, if you're not really kind of aggressive about leading these bandwagons during March, you're not going to be able to lead any of them. So, I mean, that's fine. Rogers is actually kind of another guy like Antone and Miles Straw, where I just have him in a bunch of dynasty leagues and barely any redraft leagues, just because it's, people are always kind of looking for that next big thing in the, around pick 300, pick 320. So if you want those guys, you usually got to pop them. And I've been taking Cal Quantrill over him in every league. So I'm not missing out on Cal Quantrill in redraft, but I have been missing out on Rogers and Antone. Yeah,
I mentioned Shelley's draft in that tout where she got like all the starting pitching targets I love, like the Flyers, like Kikuchi, Antone, Trevor Rogers, and Logan Gilbert. I thought that was brilliant because, I love to get a couple of those guys. Rarely end up with all of them. Where did Antone go, James, in your Tout Wars draft and hold? You can do a quick Control F, Command F, whatever.
Yeah, I will be able to do a quick Control F on that. So he went pick 295.
Yeah, I got him inside my top 200 now. I'm getting carried away, admittedly, but I mean, geez, that guy looks amazing. And maybe he's just in the bullpen to start, but if he gives you like 110 really good innings and just chews up a active spot, you can just leave him be. I mean, he could be really valuable. This was the Craig Mish tweet, by the way, at Craig Mish on Twitter. It is entirely possible Trevor Rogers is as good as anyone in the Marlins rotation, which is pretty scary. A year ago, I'm not sure anyone, including the Marlins, would have had him in their top 10. Top 10 pitchers, by the way. A huge jump for him. So Mish is pumping him up, and I see it. That Marlins rotation could be pretty awesome. And try to get some of those high upside starters.
This is why you got to do those draft and holds back in October, November. That's where I do have Antone in both the draft and holds I did then. I have Rogers in both the draft and holds I did then. So that's like the one advantage to doing those then is you get all the buzzy guys before they're buzzy. But now I'm still getting Kikuchi, still getting Quantrill, but now I'm taking guys like Adam Wainwright and just stuff like that because I just, I can't pay that top dollar on some of these guys. Rogers, I'm definitely bummed that I don't have more of him, but I mean, I'm glad that you at least know you're getting carried away on Antone.
I'm well aware of it.
I still think we can make a run at him in Maine, but
I'm gonna probably have to get insistent on that. But
he's looked pretty good.
He has, and we'll see. I did see that. I think it was Mark Sheldon of MLB.com that said that from what he's hearing, Antone's more likely to end up in the bullpen, which is super annoying. Why do you want to bring in that guy when you're down 5 instead of just, instead of right from the start, give your chance a better chance to win?
How do you crack that rotation, though? I mean, that's a stacked rotation.
Yeah, Lorenzen's like purposefully backing off his velo. Okay, he looked brutal the other day. By the way, Josh Rojas, I was watching that game where he went yard twice. That guy is – I remember saying, like, when I was doing the pod with Todd, maybe I'll take him with my last pick in TGFBI. I actually didn't, but I think Josh Rojas is definitely like a mixed league bench option at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he looked – I mean, I think he crushed one off. Well, Lorenzen looked like crap, but he had 2 homers in that game and just looked really good.
I think Rojas is already kind of getting overdrafted over these last couple days, just based off of spring training.
Yeah,
like
we all know that we shouldn't do this.
I can't stress enough. Like everyone that's listening to this should avoid all the spring training stats you possibly can and all the spring training videos you possibly can, unless it's like an injured player who you just want to see. You obviously want to see like what a guy like Xander Bogaerts is looking like. Is he hitting for power and stuff like that? But on anyone that's just healthy and you didn't have any concerns about like where they were at health wise, if you can avoid all the spring information you possibly can, you'll be better off.
Yeah, I'm trying to put the earmuffs on with like Joey Gallo. Like I drafted him once only because I had a huge batting average base, but that's just not a guy that I wanted on my teams coming in. I'm trying not to overreact to 5 homers already, whatever it is. We know he can hunt a fastball. That's probably what all pitchers are throwing him right now as they kind of ease into things. But anyway, good start for him. Real quick note before we wrap things up here. Ottoneu Fantasy Baseball is the next level fantasy baseball challenge you've been looking for. Experience a year-round dynasty competition with deep rosters, accumulate prospects to lead your team in the future, or to move for a superstar at the trade deadline. Keep your baseball mind engaged in the offseason with trades and arbitration. Learn more about why everyone who plays Ottoneu becomes addicted at ottoneubaseball.com. That's OTTONEU baseball.com. Ottoneu, better fantasy baseball. Sticking with this Mariners organization, James, Emerson Hancock, your 6th-ranked prospect here, Jonathan Clase. Then Taylor Trammell, he's kind of lost some shine, but he's off to a great start this spring. And could be in the mix, actually, to break camp. And I think that would kind of give them some cover in light of this whole Jared Kelenic thing. I think it was maybe Matt Thompson who suggested something like that, where it just wouldn't look so bad if they started with Trammell because he was we're not worried about service time. Not the prospect that Jared Kelenic is, but are you maybe seeing some light here with Taylor Trammell?
I mean, I don't think anything has changed for me in terms of what I think about him based on what he's doing this spring. I think that
Jake
I
Fraley's
still
struggling.
I wasn't completely off of the Jake Fraley train, so I was hoping that he would at least get a month's worth of at-bats just to give him one last shot, because pretty soon he's just going to be completely passed over with the big names they have at outfield. So I wanted to see Fraley get another 100 plate appearances or something like that. But I mean, if Trammell gets up there, I mean, he's just not the type of prospect you really have to play service time games with, because he's like a left fielder basically who, I don't know, he could be solid in fantasy because of the speed, but I don't think he's a game changing player by any means.
Anybody else in this Mariners organization you want to mention?
No, I think we can move on.
Nice. Well, the Rangers, we just heard, are going to be at full capacity for opening day. COVID pumps its fist. And I think your Brewers are going to be down there, so that's a little scary. Hope everybody's safe down there in that Costco warehouse that is Globe Life Field. But let's talk about this organization. Josh Jung, top third base prospect here. You have him among the players we could see in 2021.
Yeah, Josh Jung, big time riser up my rankings based on what happened in this past summer at the alternate training site. He had a plus hit tool type of guy when they drafted him in the first round in 2019, but had started tapping into power, and that was kind of a big development with him, because it seemed like he might have been kind of like a 20 homer guy when they drafted him, but now he's kind of profiling more as a potential number 3 hitter. And you just look at that organizational depth chart. I mean, they're just it's basically Jung, Gallo, Taveras. Those are the only guys who I just don't think you have to really worry about their long-term playing time. And I mean, they're probably going to trade Gallo before he hits free agency anyway. So it's basically Jung and Taveras that they're building around at this point. I mean, they just don't have much else in the way of quality position players. So I think they're going to start Jung's clock, whenever they think he's ready. It could even be in the first half. So, I mean, I did he go in AL labor?
I don't think he did, actually.
I thought I maybe saw him on Brett Sayers.
Brett probably did draft him, yeah. I should have probably, I don't know, I like McClanahan, but maybe I should have taken Jung over Abraham Toro, because I actually needed a third base option. But when you already have Kelenic and Franco, I had to tell myself, because somebody put Rutschman out for $1. I was like, no, you're not going to. You can't take another guy and play the waiting game. Leody Taveras, you kind of talked me into him earlier this offseason. we have him penciled in as a starter in center field. It looks like that will be the case for Leody Taveras. And you made the case that this is not like a bat knocked out of your hands type of Malik Smith speedster. This guy can actually hit a little bit.
Well, it's partly that, but he's also just projects to be a really good defensive center fielder long term. And like I think like you have like people underrate defense so much in fantasy, and it really matters for these speed guys. And like Malik Smith is a great example. Danny Santana is a great example of guys where they had speed, but they weren't good defenders. In fact, they were well below average defenders. And so when you're not putting up high OBPs and you're a below average defender, you're kind of a replacement level player. So you can't count on those guys to hold the job all season. I'm actually kind of almost more concerned about Nick Solak's playing time than I am Taveras for that exact reason. Like, he is a bad defender no matter where you put him. And they have a ton of bad defenders on this roster. So, you know, whichever one of these bad defenders aren't hitting, they're going to lose playing time. And Taveras has the luxury of, like, I think he can go through like a 3 or 4 week slump at the dish and keep the job because he's by far their best center fielder. And he's a long-term building block because of that two-way potential. Whereas like Solak, if he hits, he'll stay in the lineup for sure. But you can't play a below-average defender at second base who's slumping, really. I mean, maybe you can if you're the Rangers just because you don't have any other options. But that's what kind of gives me confidence in Taveras' playing time. I'm not super confident that he's going to be that he's not going to be a batting average drain. Like, I mean, he could definitely hit like 235 or something. But I think, you know, there's definitely going to be speed as long as he's playing. I'm not sure how much of that power breakout last year was legit, but he hit for way more power than I was expecting. And in fact, I think it was his highest ISO at any level as a pro. So that was really encouraging for a guy who was debuting a little bit ahead of schedule last year.
Nice, and I agree totally with you. The defense is underrated in fantasy. We say, oh, defense doesn't count, but playing time drives fantasy value. You have to have the playing time, and you have to be on the field, and, you know, especially in the National League with no DH right now anyway, you have to be able to play some defense or just hit the crap out of the ball. And so, yeah, Leody being such a good center fielder is such a good defender out there does help his case. Are they really going to start with Rougned Odor at third? I mean, can't we just throw in the towel here, folks?
I almost wonder if Odor is going to be somehow good this year, just based on it. Like, I don't know. I just kind of have this weird feeling that now that he's been demoted, like they moved him off of second base. They basically told him, like, you're on your last legs with this club. Like, I wonder if that's going to light a fire under him, because I mean, he theoretically should still be like right in the middle of his prime.
Yeah, I mean, he's not an old guy at all.
So
27.
I don't have Odor anywhere, but I think where he's going in drafts, I don't think it's a terrible gamble to go after him because it was only a few years ago where he was really productive.
Yeah, I was just looking at this depth chart trying to see like maybe. You know, who's going to be the guy biding time for them at third before Jung comes up? I was thinking maybe they bring in Maikel Franco. Hopefully he lands with an AL team after I got him. I had to get creative at third base, James, after I missed on Jamer Candelario. So I figured, hell, Maikel Franco's got a 50-50 shot to land in the AL. Let's throw him out for $1 and see what happens. That would be a huge break for me if he lands with the O's.
Oh man!
I mean, that would be a game changer for me. That tells you a little bit about my team. It's a little thin on offense anyway. James, back to the Rangers here. Luisangel Acuna, kind of like with Antone. Maybe I was getting a little too hyped a few years back, but I mean, there's still a lot to like here with Luisangel Acuna, as your ranking here indicates, but you have to make it clear that this is not the same player that his older brother is.
Right. I mean, I think the fact that he's related to Ronald Acuna it's noteworthy. Like, I mean, the fact that he's related to arguably like top 2 or 3 player in the game, like that's you'd rather him be related to Ronald Acuna than like related to
Kyle Farmer or something.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. But he's Acuna is what, like 6 feet tall. I think Luisangel is probably like 5'7", and so just right there, I mean, clearly not the same type of explosive run producer at any point really in his career that his big brother is, but he's got speed. He's a threat on the bases. He's got a good command of the strike zone. Obviously baseball is in his blood. I mean, he's been around the game forever, and I wouldn't recommend betting on too many guys his height making it, but I think that he's shown enough so far where I certainly wouldn't rule it out. And I think you can hope on him maybe being a leadoff hitter or maybe a number 2 hitter someday if it all works out. I think that's kind of the hope with his small strike zone he's going to get and his ability to kind of work the count. So excited to see what he does in his full season debut. But yeah, definitely not going to be the number 1 player in fantasy ever.
Yeah, that's a high bar set by his older brother, but yeah, still a good prospect in his own right, but you have to keep expectations in check a little bit. Maximo Acosta, your 4th-ranked player in this organization. Then Dane Dunning. Every now and then I see Dane Dunning go in a draft, and I'm like, really? But then I'd look at the numbers, and I'm like, yeah, I could see it, I guess. He was kind of the centerpiece, I guess you could say, in the return for Lance Lynn, so I'd imagine they want to give him a look, see what they got. 3.97 ERA, 1.12 WHIP last year. Are you interested in Dane Dunning for this season?
No. I think he's like a streamer, even in like a 15-team league, and he's getting drafted, obviously, ahead of that. I think the White Sox, it was really sharp of them to kind of sell high on him. I like that trade for them a lot. And it's a good ballpark in Texas, but I mean, it's a pretty bad defense behind him, and you're not going to get a ton of run support. I mean, it's one of the worst teams in the league. So I think he was pitching like he probably doesn't have a plus pitch. I mean, he might not even have more than one like 55 grade pitch. So I just kind of view him as sort of a number 4, number 5 starter on a bad team with a bad defense. So definitely want to pick your spots with him.
I hear you. Then a little ways down the list, Demarcus Evans. Mentioned we both kind of like Jonathan Hernandez, and I think a large part of that was not only Hernandez's skills, but we don't really believe in Jose Leclerc. Demarcus Evans, bullpen all the way, but he's got the stuff to be in that mix down the road. Don't you think? I think he could be a closer, Demarcus Evans?
Well, yeah. I mean, they've been kind of grooming him, I think, as the closer of the future there. I'm just going to pull up what he did in the minors, but he's gigantic. I think I sat in the same section as he was charting pitches in the AFL a year or 2 ago, and I mean he looks more like a football player than a baseball player, but really really heavy fastball. I mean he was saving games in 2018, 2019 in the minors. Huge strikeout rates, really good at preventing runs. I mean, I definitely think that if it's not going to be Hernandez, I think Evans is probably the most likely closer of the future for Texas. So certainly a draft and hold guy. He probably isn't going to break camp with that job. I think that's something where he'd probably have to earn it in season, but that bullpen is not good. So I think he could potentially earn that job sometime this summer.
Yeah, only 4 innings in his debut, but an O swing rate north of 40% just speaks to the ability to get hitters to chase and swing it, get those empty swings. So that's pretty nice. And I have that. I'll have a roster spot free in AL Labor by putting Jonathan Hernandez on the IL. Maybe Demarcus Evans will be the corresponding pickup for me. We'll see. He was dealing with a lat injury earlier this spring. So we'll see. I mean, I'd have to know he's on the active roster first before I add him, but he's definitely a guy to watch in that Texas bullpen. Anybody else you want to mention here as we wrap things up, James?
I love Ricky Vanasco. Was my favorite pitching prospect by a mile in this system a year ago, but he had Tommy John surgery, and I still think he could have a bright future, but I think he has to be added to the 40-man after this season, and does not have much upper level experience at all. So that really kind of puts a crunch on his time clock there, which isn't great from a developmental standpoint. So that's kind of a bummer. And then Chris Cease is a shortstop who Chris Welsh was getting me really hyped on a few years ago, but he's just had a really hard time staying healthy. Apparently he looked really awesome in instructs and was just super tooled up, and I could see him being a big riser this year if he's as advertised.
Nice. Well, great stuff as always. I always learn myself talking to you every week, James. I was thinking it's been... Oh, go ahead.
I can update you that I will, in fact, be taking Logan Gilbert here. Nice. And I'll get Logan Gilbert, and I'll get Victor Caratini here. So a couple live picks on the
exciting Caratini pick. But that's cool that you got Gilbert. I was gonna say though, it's been like 9 months since we wrapped up that hip hop draft, so we're gonna have to think of something new, because I know there's a section of the listeners that appreciate our hip hop commentary, even though I am not qualified to speak on such things. But maybe we could get a new draft going here at the end of the show.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that's maybe more of a regular season thing once everything kind of slows down here for us in the preseason. But always taking ideas on that. So I know that some of you have probably sent me multiple ideas, and we haven't done any of them yet. But maybe the time will be right this time around.
Yeah, man. I just I haven't been listening to much new stuff, but I still think it's fun to just throw that in the mix at the end of these shows. So we'll maybe get a new hip-hop draft going. Thank you all for listening. Thanks again, James. And we will be back on Farm Friday on XM on Friday, and then back here next week. Hope you'll join us on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.